My parents kicked my daughter and me out of the annual picnic. Because my daughter was forced to sit on the grass while my nephews had chairs with their names, I asked for one more seat. My brother said, "Get a better job and maybe she'll matter." I made a post. 7 hours later their company was boycotted online. I'm Claire, 35, single mom to an incredible daughter named Nora. I work full-time as a librarian in Asheville, North Carolina, a modest but lovely place, full of mountain views, farmers markets, and the faint scent of roasted coffee that always hangs in the air. It's not glamorous, but it's home. It's ours. I divorced Nora's father 6 years ago. Long story short, he was more committed to chasing happiness than building a family. I didn't get much in the divorce, and I didn't ask for more than I needed. I've never been the type to demand what others won't offer freely. My family? They're not bad people, at least not on paper. But there's a lot that goes unspoken when you're the black sheep. My older brother Clark is successful by every conventional measure. He runs a flashy digital marketing company in Charlotte, has a massive house in Myers Park, a wife who seems to always be networking, and 2 sons who attend an elite private school. My parents, Julian and Margaret, have always leaned heavily into the narrative of success equals value. They've never said it outright, but the message is clear: Clark is their golden boy. I am the humble one. The bookish daughter who chose motherhood and books over law school and networking galas. Every July, my parents host a big family picnic at Biltmore Park. It's always the same: grilled food, handmade signs, matching t-shirts for the kids, and those annoying backyard games that Clark insists on organizing like it's the Olympics. It used to be something I looked forward to even after the divorce, even when things felt awkward. This year, I put in effort. I really did. I brought homemade pasta salad and sparkling lemonade. I had even splurged a little on a dress for Nora that had sunflowers across the hem, because she said it made her feel like sunshine. We were both excited. She had drawn little thank you cards for Grandma and Grandpa the night before. We showed up just 10 minutes after it started. As usual, the group had already clustered into familiar zones: Clark's family at the center of everything, my parents hovering nearby, distant cousins milling around with their kids. I waved. No one seemed to notice. The tables were arranged under a set of shade trees. I saw neatly labeled chairs, actual custom folding chairs, with Parker and Nolan's names stitched into the backs. My nephews. Beside them were chairs for Clark and his wife Elena. The rest of the adults had their seats claimed too. I glanced around for extras. There weren't any. Nora tugged at my hand. "Where should we sit, Mom?" I looked around again. "Let's find a spot, honey." We ended up sitting on the grass near the edge of the gathering. No blanket. No cushion. Just a patchy, slightly damp area near the mulch border. I tried to make it fun, like a picnic within the picnic. Nora smiled because she always tries to stay cheerful, for me. I approached my mom casually, trying to keep the peace. "Hey, Mom. Did you guys bring any extra chairs?" Nora's the only one sitting on the ground. Her response was flat. "You should have brought one. Everyone else did." It wasn't said cruelly. Just dismissively. Like I was asking for a third slice of pie, not basic consideration. "Even for the kids?" I asked, gesturing toward the twins who were now playing with foam swords while seated like royalty. "Well, Parker and Nolan have their own chairs," she said, with a half shrug. "It's not our job to pack for you." I didn't argue. I just walked back to Nora. A few minutes later, Clark came over with a red plastic cup and the swagger of someone who has never had to explain himself. He glanced at us. "Didn't bring a chair this year?" he asked. I bit my tongue. There weren't any left. He took a sip from his drink and grinned. "Get a better job, Claire. Maybe then she'll matter." He laughed, as if he had just delivered a friendly jab between siblings. I looked at him. Really looked. This man, who grew up in the same house as me, who once held my hand when I was scared to sleep alone as a kid, who I once thought would protect my daughter as a godfather if anything happened to me. Nora was pretending not to listen, picking at a blade of grass. I could see her blinking fast, trying not to cry. We left. Quietly. No drama. I put the food back in the tote bag, packed up our plates, and told Nora we were going to have a special picnic of our own. No one stopped us. No one even asked why we were leaving. That night, after Nora went to bed, I sat on our tiny balcony with a cup of cold coffee and opened Reddit. I'd never posted anything personal before. But something in me needed to speak. Not scream. Just speak. I didn't name names. I didn't seek pity. I just told the story. I talked about what it feels like to be quietly dismissed your whole life. How even at a family gathering, especially at a family gathering, those little slights become mountains. How my daughter, my sweet girl, had to learn that family love can be conditional if you don't fit into the neat little narrative of achievement. I ended the post with one sentence: when even your own child doesn't get a seat at the table, you start to wonder if you've ever really belonged. I logged off. And when I woke up 7 hours later, my phone had exploded. By the time I'd poured my morning coffee, the post had already hit the front page of /True off my chest. Notifications buzzed nonstop. There were thousands of comments, people sharing their own stories of exclusion, toxic family dynamics, subtle classism. I was stunned. I hadn't expected this. It wasn't just sympathy, it was anger. Real, righteous anger. Strangers were furious on behalf of Nora. Furious that a child had been treated like an afterthought because her mother didn't fit some invisible mold. I kept reading, scrolling past a blur of usernames and digital support, until I saw a comment that froze me in place. Someone needs to find out what company this guy runs. It was a single sentence, buried in a sea of empathy, but it was like lighting a match. The next few hours moved quickly. Too quickly. I didn't post any identifying information, but I hadn't exactly hidden things either. The city, the nature of the insult, the details about the chairs, all breadcrumbs. Redditors are nothing if not internet detectives. By mid-morning, someone had posted a screenshot from Clark's LinkedIn profile. Then someone else found the website of his company, a boutique marketing firm that recently started boasting about its family values in its new branding campaign. That irony wasn't lost on anyone. Suddenly, people weren't just angry. They were mobilizing. Within hours, online reviews for the firm tanked. Former employees chimed in, some confirming that Clark often made inappropriate comments about people's backgrounds, appearances, or educational pedigree. A few described him as someone who acted like HR was optional. One review said, "He treats people the way he treated his sister in that post." By lunch, 3 of his clients had released vague but clearly connected statements online, saying they'd no longer endorse or support recent behavior by individuals affiliated with our former partners. I didn't know any of this until I got a text from Elena. "What did you do?" That was it. No greeting. No concern. Just 4 words dripping with blame. Then came the calls. First from Clark, then my mom, then my dad. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just sat there on my couch, heart racing, Nora's sketchbook open beside me with a half-finished drawing of a tree and 2 stick figures sitting beneath it. I was still staring at that page when Nora came in and climbed onto the couch beside me. "Mom," she asked softly, "are you sad?" I shook my head and pulled her into a hug. "Not sad," I said, and meant it. Just surprised. Because I was. Not just by the internet's response, but by how I felt. I expected guilt or fear. But what I felt was relief. For the first time in a long while, I had said the truth. Not quietly. Not diplomatically. And it wasn't just heard, it was understood. Later that evening, I did finally answer a call. It was from my mother. She didn't ask how Nora was. She didn't ask why I left. She went straight into it. You've made a mess, she said, her voice taut. Your brother's business is suffering. You've humiliated us. This could ruin his family. I waited. Are you calling to check on me? I asked. Claire, she said, like I was being difficult. You blew things out of proportion. It was just a picnic. It's never just a picnic, I said. It's every year. Every birthday. Every time Nora's an afterthought while Parker and Nolan are celebrated like royalty. There was a pause. A long one. You always make yourself the victim, she finally said. And that was it. That's what they think. That I chose this role. That I enjoy it. After I hung up, I sat for a long time watching Nora play with the little wooden animals on our rug. She was humming to herself. Unbothered. Unaware of the war unfolding beyond the safety of our walls. But the internet doesn't stay on the internet. By the next day, things escalated. Elena posted something passive-aggressive on her Instagram story, an image that said when people seek attention, they'll step on anyone to get it. Even family. The comments were limited, of course. Carefully curated. But someone still sent me a screenshot. Then a mutual cousin reached out through Facebook Messenger, asking if I was okay but also wondering if I'd meant for it to go this far. I didn't reply. And Clark? He finally left a voicemail. His voice, usually so smug and controlled, was practically shaking with fury. I don't know what kind of game you're playing. But you better fix it. You think this makes you a hero? You've embarrassed me. You've embarrassed this family. You think people are really on your side? They'll forget you tomorrow. And you'll still be nothing. Still be nothing. That line stuck with me. It stuck with me even as strangers kept messaging me stories about their own dismissive families. Even as a small group of people started resharing the post with messages like, "This happened to me too." One woman DM'd me. She was a children's therapist in Tennessee, and she said she showed the post to a support group of single mothers, many of whom cried. Your words gave them permission to not feel ashamed, she wrote. I read that message 4 times. There was no victory in what had happened, only exposure. And exposure brings pain. My parents went radio silent after the initial call. I heard through a cousin that they canceled the annual August cookout. Too much drama, they said. My aunt, my mother's sister, texted me asking if this family fallout was going to continue into the holidays. I didn't respond. What do you even say when the people closest to you are more upset about embarrassment than behavior? I tried not to think about it. I focused on work, on Nora, on carving out new routines. But the silence from my family started to feel louder than the internet's noise. Nora didn't ask about the picnic again. But I caught her doodling a picture a few nights later. It showed 3 kids in chairs, and 1 girl sitting alone on the grass. She'd drawn herself with extra big eyes. Sad ones. That night, after she fell asleep, I stared at that drawing for a long time. I couldn't sleep. I thought about chairs. About all the ways we build tables and who we decide gets a seat. And I realized I never wanted revenge. I just wanted a place where my daughter wouldn't be made to feel like a guest in her own family. A week after everything blew up online, the silence from my family had settled into something almost tangible, like a cold draft you can't quite locate, but feel just the same. I wasn't blocked, but no one messaged me again. Not to check on Nora. Not to ask how I was holding up. Not even to argue. It was like they had all slipped into a private group chat I couldn't access, one where I'd been voted off the island. Work helped. The library was quiet, stable. The hum of the scanner, the soft clack of the keyboard, the smell of old books, it was all a comfort. People smiled, said hello. I wasn't the girl who made the viral post there. I was just Claire, who always remembered your name and could recommend a mystery novel like a pro. But even there, the world was smaller than I thought. 3 days after the post, A teenage girl in the YA section hesitated as I helped her find a copy of The Hate You Give. She looked at me, narrowed her eyes, and asked, "Were you the one with the picnic story?" I froze for half a second, then nodded slowly. "Yeah. That was me." She gave me this look, wide-eyed and a little awestruck. "That was messed up. Your daughter's lucky to have you." She turned and walked off without saying anything else, but I stood there a minute longer, gripping the book a little tighter than necessary. The truth is, I didn't feel like someone to admire. I felt exposed. Vulnerable. The kind of raw that comes from sharing something deeply personal and watching it spiral into the world like a leaf in a storm. I didn't regret it. Not for 1 second. But I hadn't expected the fallout to be so layered. It wasn't just about Clark or the chair or the picnic. It was the entire system we'd been quietly playing into all these years, where people like me were expected to be quiet, grateful, invisible. Where the love you received depended on your resume, your income, your ability to fit the mold. And I was done with that. Still, I was unprepared for what happened next. One evening, I got an email from a woman named Sheila. She was the founder of a nonprofit based in Raleigh that focused on childhood mental health and family equity. She had read the post, followed the storm it created, and wanted to speak with me about a project they were working on. I was skeptical at first. I thought maybe she wanted to feature me in a newsletter or something. But when we spoke on the phone, she told me something that took me by surprise. "We're working on a small picture book series for children," she said. "About inclusion, empathy, small moments that leave big impressions. We'd love to include your voice, your story." I nearly dropped the phone. "Me?" She said. The tone of my post, the way I described Nora's experience, made their entire team pause. It was specific, yes, but universal in a way that connected. She offered a modest stipend and said I could write something if I wanted, no pressure. And then, she added, "If your daughter draws at all, we'd love to include her illustrations." I nearly cried right there. That night, I told Nora about the idea. She lit up instantly. "You mean, like a real book?" "A real book," I said. She immediately pulled out her colored pencils. She had so many ideas. Chairs with names, kids sitting in a circle, a girl planting a flower where someone once sat alone. She was humming again. We spent the next few nights working together. I wrote in bursts after she fell asleep, and she'd illustrate based on the pages I left for her. We kept it simple. Sweet. Honest. We titled it "Everyone Gets a Chair." The first draft was rough, but Sheila loved it. She said it was tender, powerful, and exactly what their series needed. They moved forward. Just like that. The timing couldn't have been more poetic. Because while we were building something, Clark was still unraveling. I hadn't spoken to him, not directly. But I still had friends in Charlotte, and people talk. Apparently, 2 more clients walked away. One of his top employees quit after the company issued a limp, PR-crafted statement that basically amounted to "We value all people" without addressing a single thing. Elena was furious. Someone said she blamed me for torching their lifestyle. It wasn't just the financial loss, it was the reputation. Clark had spent years building this curated image. When it shattered, he didn't know how to function. He wasn't equipped for humility. He didn't know how to say, "I was wrong." And my parents? Well, they weren't handling things much better. My dad finally broke the silence after almost 2 weeks. He showed up at the library. Just walked in one afternoon while I was shelving books in the biography section. I hadn't seen him in person since the picnic. "Claire," he said, in that way he always did, low, formal, like he was stepping into a meeting rather than seeing his daughter. I blinked. "Dad?" He looked uncomfortable. He always looked uncomfortable when things got emotional. He cleared his throat and said, "Thought I'd stop by. See how you were doing." I didn't say anything right away. Just kept my hand on the book I was holding. A memoir. Ironic. He glanced around. I don't agree with how everything went down. But I didn't raise you to air private matters online. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You also didn't raise me to sit down and let people disrespect my child. He stiffened. Clark said, I don't care what Clark said. My voice was low, but even. I was there. You were there. And no one stood up for her. Not even you. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, shame, maybe. But it passed too quickly. You're letting strangers ruin our family, he said. No, I corrected. You did that yourselves. I just told the truth. He didn't say goodbye. He just left. I stood there alone in the aisle, between the memoirs and the biographies, heart pounding. But not from fear. From clarity. The truth was, I didn't need to rebuild anything with them unless they wanted to build something real. Something mutual. Something honest. I wasn't going to beg for belonging anymore. But I also knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The days rolled by, and the silence from my family became the new normal. There was no apology. No effort to make things right. Just damage control on their end and healing on mine. Nora and I kept working on the book, fine-tuning the language, tweaking her drawings. She drew a page where a girl stands in front of a picnic with her arms open wide, offering chairs to everyone, big, small, different, shy. I cried when I saw it. Sheila and her team loved the final manuscript and illustrations so much that they decided to push it as the flagship title for a fall launch at a family mental health summit. They printed hundreds of advance copies. They also offered to cover our travel and hotel to attend the event in Raleigh, where Nora would read a few pages to a room of parents, educators, and therapists. The night before the summit, Nora curled up beside me on the hotel bed, her voice sleepy but sure. Do you think Grandpa and Grandma will see the book? I hesitated. Maybe, I said. Would you want them to? She thought for a long moment. Only if they read the whole thing. Not just look at the pictures. That's my girl. The summit was surreal. People clapped for us. Parents cried during the reading. A school counselor from Atlanta approached me after and said she planned to use Everyone Gets a Chair during their empathy workshops. It was healing. Not in the cheesy, everything is fixed kind of way. But in the way that gives you permission to move forward. Then came the twist. About 3 weeks after the book's release, I got a call from an Asheville radio station. They were doing a segment on voices in the community and asked if I would come in for an interview about the book, the post, and what had happened with my family. I said yes. The interview aired on a Wednesday morning. I was calm, honest. I didn't name anyone, again. I talked about how small things like forgotten chairs can send loud messages to children, and how love that comes with conditions isn't really love at all. I spoke about resilience, about Nora, about what it means to claim your worth when no one hands it to you. The station posted a clip on Instagram. It went viral again. But this time, not with internet strangers, this time, with people in our town. And Clark? Well, it turns out clients don't just Google you once. A few of his newer ones had taken him on despite the first controversy, but the radio interview reopened the conversation. This wasn't just one moment of family drama, it was a pattern. It was character. One of his biggest remaining contracts, a regional children's brand that prided itself on inclusivity, dropped his firm. Publicly. Then an old interview of him resurfaced from a panel where he made a dismissive comment about single moms not understanding the hustle. It wasn't a good look. The internet remembered. By November, Clark had stepped down officially as CEO and transitioned to advisory roles. In other words, they pushed him out to protect the company. That's when it came full circle. A month later, I got a thick envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a copy of Everyone Gets a Chair, and a handwritten note on the back of a business letterhead I knew all too well. Claire, I read the book. I see now. Not everything, but enough. I'm sorry. Mom, that was it. No calls. No requests. Just those words. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. I just felt released. Nora and I started our own little tradition. Every year on the third Saturday of July, the day the family picnic would have happened, we host our own. Just us, sometimes with friends, sometimes just a blanket and a basket and 2 foldable chairs under a tree in Carrier Park. This year, she invited her whole 3rd grade class. 20 kids showed up, folding chairs in hand, even little ones with their names painted on the back. One chair sat empty, with a sign that said, "This chair is for anyone who ever felt like they didn't belong." Some kids took turns sitting in it all day. That's the thing about revenge. Sometimes it doesn't have to be loud. Or cruel. Or immediate. Sometimes it's just living your truth so fully, so publicly, that the people who try to make you feel small have to sit with their own reflection,